Welcome to the podcast, the Lincoln Institute podcast. James Saunders.
Thank you for having me.
I believe this is our fifth podcast. So for fifth or sixth, I don't know. I have to have Jose figure that out. But the ultimate goal, and I kind of talked to you this a little bit, starting this podcast for us was like, how do we connect with Californians? How do we talk about California issues? How do we just deep dive California in a lot of ways? And so you're a native Californian. You've lived here your whole life. So I'm kind of curious, what's your thoughts? Let's start with this. What makes you love California?
I've been very lucky to be able to travel the world, and every single time I just want to come home. I mean, California is just unreal. The resources, the wealth, the quality of life we have here, it's unmatched. And but you also, on top of that, just the setting is already top tier. But the people is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, the place where people grew their business and stars were here,
mm-hmm.
and leading government officials would come out of California, and California represented what was forward for the rest of the nation. Basically, a trend was set here, and it went to the rest of the country and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think about just Hollywood alone, how much of our own culture we've exported.
Yeah.
U.S., Western California culture.
Very true.
I think it's like U.S., New York, California. It's like when you think of the U.S., you think of New York and California.
Yeah. Well, those two cities, I think, yeah, you're right. That so much influence, world influence. You go to Europe, you go to Asia, you go to anywhere, they're talking about things that happen in Hollywood.
Exactly.
Or what happens in New York.
A couple years ago, I was in the Czech Republic, and I saw a bunch of grunge skaters. That reminds me of when I was growing up. People, skating,
Mm-hmm.
oversized hoodies,
Right.
And it's just like, and they're playing, just old rap and R&B. It's like, dude, this is exactly like.
Yeah.
This. I feel like I stepped into a time warp.
You're like wearing California styles from 10 years ago.
Exactly. 10, 20 years ago. It's because. Also, fashion,
Yeah.
they have its trends, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things, like, we're constantly exporting our culture.
Yeah.
And people love it.
Yeah.
And people love California.
On that same note, what do you hate about California?
Well, everyone here is spoiled, and that includes me. Everyone here, we always have good weather. This is like the one year we haven't had.
Weather's been awful this year.
It's been cloudy.
Oh my God.
It's been cloudy. It's been cloudy and 65, and people have been like, "This is terrible." How many places would love to have cloudy and 65? Other places are like Canada's on fire, and there'll be storms going through the East Coast. And we're like, oh, it's like 62. I have to wear a sweater.
Yeah.
Everyone here generally does well for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to basically live here if you don't. So that's another topic. But so everyone takes that for granted as well. The higher quality of life, and so people don't know what it's like. Don't know what it's like to live in a place where there isn't abundant wealth, and Californians take that for granted. So that's one of the things I don't like. People don't have that perspective.
Yeah. So you think people here are a little jaded, you would say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When it comes to so many different things, the diversity of food, the diversity of again, the setting. It's like you got the beach, you got the mountains, you got just the suburbs, you got the city life. You can have any kind. There's forests and stuff. You can have any kind of life you want here.
Mm-hmm.
You could be a person who skates, smokes weed, and goes surfs, and
You can do anything here.
Yeah, I'm saying that, but you could also be on the other side of that and be, in finance and
Mm-hmm.
Banking, or a politician, top of a skyscraper somewhere in LA or in Orange County, living that life. You could live anywhere in between. You could be. Every profession is available here.
Yeah.
Every culture is basically available here, and every natural setting is available here.
I think that's one of the main reasons I love California. It's just such a diverse place, so many different things that you can do and be here. You're a young
Yes.
businessman in this state trying to survive. What is your thoughts as someone, we work with tons of universities, we work with lots of young people with institutes basically based on helping the next generation, especially, after college and in the business world. You're in that right now. What's your thoughts?
California is so anti-business. It's incredible. And if you're not working to the top tier and in the right business, if you're someone who needs to grind it out, who wasn't given, wasn't born into the right situation, California probably isn't the place to grow. Mm-hmm. You're post-college, you're hungry, you want to grow your brand, yourself, you want to grow a business, whether it be your own, or you want to work with a mentor. I mean, there's always going to be places for it in certain industries that will continue to bloom in California, but overall, just the people around you, you'll find, and the overall market sentiment is it's not the place to be.
Now, if I asked you to give me a reverse argument to that, an opposite, how would you convince someone to start their business here? So I know he gave a good reason why not to. What would be a good reason to start a business here in California as a young person?
I mean, do you want to have? I mean, the advertising here is phenomenal. You can get basically, if you just get one of the famous people here to advertise for your business, you got online presence. There's so much tech still here, even though most of the tech has left. There's a lot of tech still here that can really help your business. I mean, the location's beautiful. People always want to come visit you. You know, people like to take their meetings. You know, if you're gonna have a conference, let's go out to California. We'll go to we'll go to LA. We'll go to Huntington Beach. We'll go to Newport Beach. We'll have our conference in a nice hotel there. You'll be able to attract international consumers.
Yeah.
I mean, well, maybe Idaho. You know, great state. You know, growing so much. You're not gonna get a businessman from China to go to Idaho. You know, you're not gonna get people coming from Europe to go there.
Yeah.
You know, they want to come to California if they're
That's
going to come
true.
out here. It's just, there's always going to be talent here. There's still a huge abundance of resources.
True.
And there's still business to be had out here. It's just, it's a different game. You have to know the California laws. You have to know the California way of doing things.
Yeah.
And it's not ideal for I'd say conventional growth that you would see in a lot of business talks and
Right.
business books.
And that kind of leads me to my next question is, since you've been here, thoughts on leadership and people that have run the state from when you're almost like a kid. How did you feel? Do you think it's gotten worse, better? Probably worse. I would probably.
Yeah,
probably
definitely.
assume.
It's been
But what
definitely
is your
worse.
thoughts on overall California leadership and living here your whole life?
I mean, like I said before, California used to be a stepping stone and a kind of a platform for the rest of the nation. And basically, it kind of still is, and that's the worst thing about it, is because the leadership has gone so terrible. I mean, currently, if we talk current leaders, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy is a California congressman, and he very much represents California. A big part of it where there's this voice that opposes everything the current administration, current culture is at.
Yeah.
And there's also Nancy Pelosi, who is from California, represents California. And the exact same thing represents such a huge amount of California, of the people, the sentiment people have, and the culture and how they want it. They're both effective leaders. I like Kevin, certainly, I'd say a billion times more than Nancy. It's not a hard toss-up there. Kevin's doing a great job. So current leadership, I'd say on the congressional level, Kevin's doing a great job. Nancy does well for herself and for the Democratic Party. I think her ideals are lined up the
What do you
wrong way.
think of state leadership and how the state, so minus the federal, yeah, because it's a toss-up between those, but what is your thoughts on state leadership and, as someone that is now having to pay taxes and get into that world, how do you feel about it right now and our leadership?
Now you got Newsom, and growing up I had Governor Schwarzenegger. I mean, that was the embodiment of California. I mean, the Terminator is the governor. I mean, come on. And he was a person who kind of didn't quite walk just to the Republican line. He got things done. He listened to constituents, and he would frequently jump to the other side for certain issues. And that's what I think is an effective leader of isn't just party based. And then you got Newsom, who's only party based. Well, basically doesn't lead by example. That's a big thing. No one likes a hypocrite, and he's the biggest hypocrite of them all. During COVID, going out during lockdowns, reasons like that. I mean, he came from San Francisco, right? And he was supposed to redo San Francisco, and then now he'd bring it to the whole state. San Francisco's facing problems that the whole state's facing, and look at San Francisco.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the most. I mean, a lot of stuff
Good
people
point.
will blame federally, and they'll blame the economy. And what I've learned the last couple of years is how much the state actually has control over that stuff, and the state laws. And he's the only one who can fix it. And not only is he not fixing it, he's actively making it worse for a political play. When, in my book, the best political play is to actually help your constituents. And whether
think
you
some
like
would
to,
agree with
yeah,
that.
oh, when you actually like the virtue signal, you're like, oh, I'm doing these things, I'm helping these people. These people, they're so underrepresented. The homeless, the unhoused, should really be. No, it's like, let's get stuff done. Let's stop having just speeches and say, oh, looks good for social media, looks good. I'm supporting people who are like, let's actually support them. And the best way you support someone, through the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, people, the last thing they'll worry about, the first thing they'll worry about is if they have food on the table and if there's a table to even be had, if they're in shelter. I mean, a lot of the social issues, again, when I was talking about Californians being spoiled, is because that's the issues they get to focus on, the voters, rather than focusing on, hey, people can't afford to eat.
Yeah.
And there's such an overwhelming voice of, people who are well off, who don't have those problems, that their most important issues is calling someone the wrong gender or saying someone's homeless and unhoused, rather than feeding them and housing them.
It's a lot harder to do.
It is a lot harder to do.
Than to make a speech.
And it's like, oh, I want to support that. It's like, all right, then let's put a homeless person in your house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of the common arguments. Like, of course, you don't want a homeless person in your house, but it's like the kind of community they're trying to build is one where it's everyone's like, yeah, we should do that.
Mm-hmm.
We should totally do that. And then, all right, let's do it. It's like, oh, don't do it next to me, please.
Yeah, it kind of leads into mind. I wanted to kind of go with you over some of the news, current news here in California and a little bit across the country. So I'm going to pull up our first news article here. There was a recent poll, more than likely what's going to happen, we're going to have a Trump-Biden rematch. So they did a polling, basically, of everyone. And let me just read with President Biden reportedly announcing his re-election campaign, more Americans say they feel anxious over the prospect of a 2024 rematch between Biden and his predecessor, Donald Trump. What's your thoughts about the inevitable rematch on President Biden and former President Trump?
It's just tiring. It's like the Warriors versus LeBron. It's
right.
like, the last one that was fun, but like it's over the same thing over and over again. It's like, why is this happening? And fundamentally, it's the media just piling it on people, constantly wanting them worried, constantly them wanting to be engaged and be voters, because it engages their network and gets them good reviews. So they're going to play it up. And the media is basically choosing Trump, and the Democrat Party is choosing Biden, because that's the safest. We already won. They already won that way, with Biden basically locked up in a basement, and he's done, 2 years of terrible policy. And people are still going to vote for him because they really hate the orange guy.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, so we can keep him in the basement again. We can run again. We'll just have the media bash Trump. But first, we got to put his name out there and make him the nominee. That's the biggest role of why is Trump going to be, Republicans want to win, right? Why are they voting for Trump? It's because the news only covers Trump.
Yeah.
And when the news covers DeSantis, it's always the hardest attacks. And it's like, all right, yeah, DeSantis, idiot, can't even do this, isn't even polling anywhere near Trump. Why would you even, he doesn't even a person. Trump is clearly what's going to be. And because they say it so much, it is so. And Democrats, they don't want to lose. So they can't put up someone progressive.
Yeah.
There's not really, and all the old voices would be like Manchin, Biden, who actually used to represent at least a regular Democrat, that was able to work with both sides, take issues by issues, not only party lines. And it's like, oh, they don't want that either. But no. Biden's already stuck. They're already stuck with him. They're like, all right, well, just put him with a new VP that's more likable and have another rematch where clearly they'll win. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's a matter of fact. People know they will win if that's the case. They know it. Everyone else knows it. And it sucks that we're back here again.
100%.
It's like watching a car crash slowly because you just know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything.
I'm not surprised that people are exhausted either. I am sure. The last election was tiresome. The last election was just brutal. It was just people after each other. So I'm not surprised that people are exhausted. I'm exhausted by it. When you just talk to the regular people, you talk to your Uber driver, you go to the gym, you talk to people, and people are really tired. It's always the same question. Are these really the two best Americans that we have? These two old men, are they really the best that we have?
It's really, all elections are always, the South Park does a great thing a long time ago. It's like a crap sandwich versus a butthole or something. And it's like,
the douche.
Yeah, that's what it was. Thank you. And it's
Church sandwich versus the douche.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And it's like, why is it always that way? It's because the media always hypes up the wrong people.
Yeah.
The people who get the most attention are the people who do things that people want to see or don't want to see. And so you garner all that, and so it's same exhausting thing. Also, that just speaks to the kind of the culture of America. I mean, everyone is an expert on politics nowadays. It's no longer someone
Oh,
like
yeah.
you who works in it, or people who work campaigns. Now everyone has a political opinion. I remember the days back when I was a kid. You ask someone who they voted for. You're like, you don't ask that. You don't ask who someone voted for. You're like, do you want to have a conversation about that? No, you keep it.
It's in your face right now.
Yeah, and now it's like, you meet someone like who'd you vote for?
Yeah.
It's like I'm whether or not who you voted for this person, we can't be friends.
Right.
And it's like also like money.
Ridiculous.
I mean, money. You didn't talk about money before. It was like you don't ask someone how much they get paid or anything. Now it's like, dude, you're only getting paid that. I get paid this. Like, you should really talk to this person. I mean, that's sometimes a good thing, but it's like one of those things where it's people have really, gotten rid of that boundary completely, and it's important people be able to talk about their views, but it's also it shouldn't define people, and people use it as their whole personality, and will use it in every interaction.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're this, well then this. Like, you're right, then I hate you. You're lefty, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You support this candidate, like, how could you? Like,
Yes.
I'm not going to talk to you ever again.
It's ridiculous. I mean, you're right. I don't think it's always been like that, and I think now social media, I think it's all added into the cake now that we have
Absolutely.
to eat. That is just everyone's in each other's faces. On to our next one. I wanted to bring up, and you kind of brought it up a little bit, and it's kind of in here, but kind of going off it on the presidential stuff a little bit. Our governor here in California was recently on Sean Hannity. And Hannity was like basically saying to him, I know, you probably have people texting you to run for president. You see Joe Biden, he's not doing well. You probably have people pressuring you to run for president. Thoughts on, I personally think that it's inevitable. He's going to run if it's not 24, unless, Joe Biden is still in it, but he's going to run in 28. He's going to run at some point. What is your thoughts on our governor here in the great state of California eventually running for president?
I mean, on paper, you look at he's a young guy, very charismatic, good looking, governor of one of the biggest economies in the world, California. And, already, if he can carry the state, that's already so many votes, which obviously a Democrat should. So it makes sense. God, is it awful. I mean, the thing is, because people will just blindly support him. It's like people the same way they'll blindly support Joe Biden. No one's hyped up about Joe Biden, but people will get hyped up about Gavin Newsom because he's actually alive and a person that can speak and is charismatic and, doesn't have he's a Californian. He doesn't have a terrible sense of style or terrible sense of taste, He knows how to rile up a crowd. But if you just actually look at what he's done, California, this is a mess because of him. And he was there, brought into office to, address the issues. And he hasn't addressed them. He's done a lot of things that arguably made it worse. And I think of that, and I see that, like, wow, like, that should automatically disqualify him for even higher office. And then I talked to some people, and I also had, it's funny, you said it earlier, Uber driver. He's like, you know what? He's not doing enough, because he's not left enough. That's why it's not working.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. And if he goes to the national stage, California, again, the forefront of policy, very, very left, bringing that to a lot of the country is going to reject it. And all it will fuel is more of this divide. You don't have a middle-of-the-road candidate. You have far left, far right. Why is that? It's because the media plays it up again. And, having someone if you just walk the streets of LA,
Yeah.
San Diego even now, San Francisco, even the nicer places, if places are supposed to be, insulated, like Orange County, like Newport Beach, you can tell the effect that he's had. And it's not all on him. His predecessors, current state assembly and state senate. But he's very much at the forefront of it, and he very much represents everything that's wrong with California. But also, it's gonna win. He's gonna win if he goes out there. At least he's gonna get some votes.
So this is your prediction now? If he runs, he wins?
I'd say not 24, but in the future, yeah.
And I think that's what I was going to say. I was like, if anyone that was going to run against him, I would just have a camera crew, and my ad would just be walking down Skid Row in LA and San Francisco, and you mentioned it earlier. He made a promise to San Francisco that they're going to make it better, was going to make more investment, was going to bring business. And we just read an article that that's actually my next deal here is that, San Francisco is not doing very well, and it's failing in a lot of ways. So You're right. I think a lot of what's bad about California and the bad policies of California, he definitely is like the leading example of those policies.
Absolutely. I mean, there's three different ways I want to approach that, like real estate wise, and Governor Newsom personally. But it's funny you mentioned that you say you were gonna follow him with the film crew, because Ron DeSantis is the exact thing. 2 days ago, he was walking the streets of San Francisco with a film crew, Daily Wire, and they were doing. They were basically walking the city, and what they see is people crapping on the side of the road, people shooting up, doing fentanyl, just peeing, crap, homeless, abandoned buildings, boarded up businesses, and you just walk through it. It's like this is San Francisco used to be the place like you'd want to visit, like the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, it's beautiful, year-round sunshine except for sometimes the summer it gets super cloudy. It's like it was such a fun, the golden city, and then now you just look at it, it's a dump.
Yeah.
And DeSantis walked that so you could see it firsthand, to show people what the leftists do. And it's funny enough, the cops actually ran into him, 5 cops, and they stopped him, and they actually asked him to shake his hand.
Really?
Because they said, we wish you had someone like you out there. And the firefighters, they were driving by, and they stopped, made a U-turn, cheered him on, wishing he was out here. Because those are the people actually doing the job, especially with the, people wanting to defund the police, abolish the police. You want to defund the police until a homeless man's breaking into your house.
Yeah.
And you want the police there within 20 seconds.
That's what happens.
And those are the people, dealing with it on the front lines, having to go through that. And, the people who are actually doing the work want real leadership. And Newsom isn't that. Newsom his leadership makes their problems worse.
Yeah, it does. Did I read the Newsweek article about San Francisco?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so now that we're talking about San Francisco, I want to bring that was going to actually be my topic, and yeah, I think that it's great that if you just show the city in any kind of campaign ad, I think it's going to be devastating for anyone that has to answer questions about it or even take accountability for that. It's going to be difficult. An article by Newsweek that just came out says, struggling with rampant homelessness, a drug crisis, surging crime, and several business closures, San Francisco is no longer the thriving city it used to be. Its decline in recent months has led to some to say the city is dying. So, just right there, that's a hard one to overcome. And I mean, that's a campaign ad right there, in my eyes.
I mean, your city is dying, and who do you blame it on?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Republicans haven't had a control in
not
such a long time. I mean, definitely not just the city of San Francisco, but the state.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the right wing influence? It's like, oh, it's COVID. COVID did it,
Yeah.
Or it's the housing. The business people did it. Business people in San Francisco. One of the reasons it's dying is, you can't operate a business there because it'll be broken into, or no one feels safe. You'll get all your stuff robbed, and the criminals will be on the street the next day.
Yep.
It's not even like hyperbole; it's what happens.
Yeah.
So what's the point of opening a business? And that's already stopping growth. But now these businesses are leaving, and these real estate people they're handing back the keys to their skyscrapers. Basically, the banks own them. The banks they can't. There's no money being made, so they have to give back the keys, and the banks are basically they have to write off $100 million per asset, for these office buildings, these retail businesses. So San Francisco was in a heavy decline. I mean, the tech already left, and that was the people they were catering to. And they also tech was ruining it, making the housing crisis too much. All right, they're all gone. Tech ruined it. All right, they're all gone now. Most of them are in Texas. All right, what now? What's left of the city? It's like, oh, well, they pushed everyone out. They gentrified them all. Oh, I'm sorry, they made things nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened to all the other old apartment buildings that people used to live in? Oh, well, they replaced them. It's like, okay, or where was the other apartment buildings for the people who work in? The people who work to live in. They're all gone. The city won't let them build more housing. You have to win a lottery. And California and then San Francisco, I mean, with the Bay and everything, is so rich in resources. And the people who still want to stay there, people who raise their families there, I mean, they're the reason why a place like San Francisco still thrives.
Yeah.
It's because you have the intellectual wealth, people who will stay no matter what, who keep their businesses open, who make sure their kids get good schooling and stay there, and continue things on. Well, what you would have without the amazing resources, without the amazing weather, and people wanting to stay here is you have Detroit. City with skyscrapers that are literally abandoned, houses you could buy for $1. And the thing is, Detroit doesn't have the weather like California.
That's true.
Detroit doesn't have people who are so stubborn they have to stay. And they did. And then they did 30 years of basically where San Francisco is at now. And they're like, it's become, and now it's been a full restoration. But again, I mean, it was a little bit of a different party, but who was in charge there of Detroit? It was the Democrats. It was the unions.
Well,
same thing that had the biggest hold in California is the unions. And
San Francisco is about to be the new Detroit. I think that's what we're.
San Francisco is the new Detroit. It's Detroit by the sea.
Detroit by the sea.
Yeah,
that's a campaign ad, right? Detroit by the sea.
I mean, that's all you have to point. You have to point to if you're running against Gavin Newsom.
I mean, that's it. That's basically all I have. Do you have any? That's all I have. Thank you for coming by the podcast. I was going to ask you, do you have any questions if you want to ask about the Institute? Since we're here, I don't know. Do you have anything for us?
I do. I mean, generationally, I mean, you're in your 30 now. I'm mid-20s. Where a lot of generations would been able to be grouped, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers. But I feel like Gen Z is very much a diaspora because there's people. I'm technically Gen Z, born in '99. I didn't have a cell phone until 7th grade, and I was a little bit later than some, but I was earlier than a lot of other people. And you basically have, iPad kids who have grown up now and are, are in the colleges and everything. People who, if you didn't have a phone by 1st grade, like, what were you doing? Like, you can't even communicate. Like, people love to, crap on kids. The next generation always like. But you're actually working with them. Like, what have you found? Like, people don't realize about this next generation, the differences you see between yourself and them, and someone like me and them.
I think this generation and the Gen Z that are growing, this is going to be one of the most different generations that we've ever seen. One, it's a smaller generation, but you kind of nailed it. These are the ones that are the iPad kids. These are the ones that had phones. My nieces have been able to use a phone since she was about 3 years old, grabbing the iPhone, playing games and doing things. The biggest thing that I think the biggest misconception about the young people is that there's a lot of laziness. There is some laziness, and there's a lot of their communication skills are not that great. And I do think there's some of that, but I do think this generation is actually more advanced in understanding of technology, from AI into some of the things that they're going to be able to do things that we can't comprehend right now. And it's confusing to us. I think that there's more of a confusion of this generation. And I think there's definitely some critiques that can be made. I think there's definitely some things. One thing that most of all, though, that I think this generation is dealing with and has had to deal with that no other generation has had to deal with, and that's COVID. I mean, this is a generation where things were taken from them. I mean, especially if you were a senior in high school, you didn't have prom. You learned most of your last year from a computer screen. So there's going to be some real bad things that, some negative things that happen from that. But I do think that because they were able to overcome, there's going to be some really great geniuses and some really great entrepreneurs and some real groundbreakers that come from the generation. I think it's just going to be up to us to keep our eyes open for it.
Yeah, I like that answer. I mean, that's great. I mean, I would agree.
Yeah.
We're going to have an exceptionally talented generation.
There are going to be some crazy ones for sure, but but we're going to have some ones that if they figure out AI, they're going to do some cool things.
That's the saddest thing about all this is the people who are going to be left behind. People who left the education system and will never come back.
Yeah.
Or people who came back and will never perform at the same level. I mean, I was at the tail end of it. My last 2 years, a year and a half of college, basically got all A's in COVID, Zoom University. But
Zoom University.
I mean, it's people who think about your 5th to 7th grade, 8th grade was online. You basically, that's middle school. Everyone has a terrible middle school. No one looks back at middle school.
Right.
It was like,
100%,
that was awesome. Yeah. You got to have your awkward years in front of people. You got to learn to socialize. You got to learn to learn. Because that's when actual schooling becomes difficult. You actually learn more advanced math, science, English, I worry about this next generation, but, you working with these kids across the state, really gives me hope to to see that some of these, shining stars that come out of face this adversity and become stronger for it, will have a platform and will have, opportunities because of what you do. So.
Well, thank you, sir. And it's inspiring because we meet a lot of great. I mean, just at some of the events that we've hosted and the things that we've done and recruited, we do have some really great young people that I think the state is going to be really excited for at some point.
Great. I look forward to meeting them and seeing them, make the state better.
Yeah.
Get rid of Detroit by the sea. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Jay, do you have any other? James, thank you so much for stopping by the podcast. I have a feeling we might do this again sometime.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, man.
Cool. That was it.